All right. Good evening once again, everyone. I've seen the assignment some of us are submitting already in the group. Mrs. Hannah, you can see how Mr. You can see how Mr. Gabriel formatted his work. That is actually what I expect, that you did it in a hurry. Please, that formatting wasn't even some of you. All right, so I hope you can still hear me. Okay, so I was encouraging Mrs. Hannah and every other person that are yet to submit the assignment to make sure that the format, you can see the formatting Mr. Gabriel did. Please, let's make it look more professional. Okay, so the rest, we are yet to get your assignment. Please try and do it. This is Antonia. Yesterday you said that you were not able to do your assignment. I hope that assignment is ready today. Is it ready?
But I cannot miss this class. This class is pivotal.
Is it ready?
So the data set I'm using, the calculation is always giving me 0, 0, 0. Though I'm getting the formula, I don't know why it's giving me 0, 0.
Okay.
That was what I was requesting for, if I'll use that your own database.
All right. So good. So just make sure that maybe if I remember after this class, I'll try and send that one to you. But I thought I've sent all those data in the group. Anyway, I'll try and get it across to you so that you can do your assignments. Okay, so this topic we are introducing today or tonight is going to be the last topic in the cell. Once we are done with it, we will go into SQL, which will be the last application your registration covers. But this topic happens to be a very wide topic that we cannot start and finish in one session, because the entire essence of using Excel for data analysis or data analytics is wrapped in this function. So if you understand this function very well, you might not, most of your financial analysis, your business data analysis, you may not even need most of the functions we have covered so far. So it's a powerhouse of statistical functions. And as we all know, when it comes to making data-driven decisions, most decisions are influenced by statistical values or analysis. We are looking at introduction to pivot table. Introduction to pivot table. So the way we will go with it is that we will understand the fundamentals, how we can use pivot table and all the functions it houses. And then after that, we will perform some analysis, and then we will end it with building dashboards. So we'll look at least 2 different data, or if I have one rich data, we could just use it to build an interactive dashboard. And that is the beauty of data analytics, particularly with application like Excel. You should be able to build a dynamic and interactive dashboard at the end of this particular topic. So let's start with the definition. What is pivot table? Pivot table. So a pivot table is a powerful Excel tool used to summarize, analyze. Said is a powerful Excel tool used to summarize, analyze, exploit, and present large data sets by reorganizing, which means pivoting data into meaningful insights without changing the original data. Let me come again with that definition. A pivot table is a powerful tool in Excel used to summarize, analyze, exploit, and present large data sets by reorganizing, brackets, which means pivoting or pivoting data into meaningful insights without changing the original data. Now, if you look at that definition, there are some key terms that I want to simplify. Though at the beginning of this training, I have already simplified some of these terms, but I'm going to do that again because this is just like we are starting and finishing the entire analysis all over. So it is good we all understand these concepts at this point. Now, in that definition, I mentioned the word summarize. Now, to summarize means aggregating values. And you know, all this while, we have been using some conditional statistical functions like sum if, count if, to summarize value, particularly what numerical values within our data set. So what we are simply saying is that the pivot table offers us a lot of data summarization functions that can be used to summarize data. Now, the analysis, like we have established before, analysis is talking about drawing insights or identifying trend, pattern, or getting valuable or actionable insights that could influence smart decision making from the given data sets. And then we'll talk about exploit and presenting. Right now, of course, presentation is involved whenever you perform any form of analysis. So I've already established all these facts from the beginning. At the end of any form of analysis you are carrying out, you must always present your findings, which mix up your observation and, if possible, your recommendation. Okay, so in a very simple or simplest manner, we can define pivot table as a reporter or as a report. So which means that what we want to model with the pivot table, they are nothing but collection of what? Reports, and each of these reports constitutes insights and the collection of different model or different structure that will be used to present your pivot report is what forms your dashboard. So the essence of a dashboard is to allow you to perform dynamic and interactive analysis. Another benefit of dashboard is that it saves us from duplicating analysis model. So which means that a single model can be used to perform multiple analysis. And that is why your dashboard should be dynamic and interactive. Sorry, I don't know why this is moving. Okay, so let's quickly look at some of the key ideas to emphasize when you are working with pivot table. So what I'm doing is to give us a background, because a lot of data analysts sometimes they don't even know why they should involve pivot table. They don't know the kind of data that is suitable for analyzing with pivot table. And that is why I am giving this background, so that we can all have concrete understanding, so that we'll be able to identify why and how to use it. So one of the key idea of pivot table is that pivot table turn raw data into answers. It turns raw data into answers. Now, which means that you must have drafted your analysis questions. And what we are simply saying is that with the help of the pivot table, you can turn the entire raw data to what answer to those questions. And of course, those answer or those questions, you know that they are strategically programmed to enable us to draw insight from the data. For example, let's say you are given a sales data or business data or financial data, and you are asked to perform analysis that will involve this kind of question. So these are the kind of analysis question. Once you identify them in your data, you know that this kind of analysis should be done with pivot table. When you have questions like how much did each product sell, for example, you are given a data set, just like we have it here now. I think products, for my data here, product line represents the different products involved in this sales. Now, supposing we are asked, the company wants to know the total income, because I know we have income column here. Let's assume the company wants to know the total gross income. Total gross income from each of this product line. And then we can also have questions like which customer bought the most? Which customer bought the most? That is where you have a data set that mentions the name of the customer. So if I'm relating that with the data set I have here, I could say which city generated or generates the highest gross income, or which payment method actually generates the highest gross income. So you can see this kind of question actually involve summarizing value. It involves aggregation. It involves aggregating values. It involves exploratory analysis. That is why I used the word exploit the other time, before you can arrive at tangible insight. Now, we can also have questions like, what is the total sales by region? So, but if I'm using this particular data set, it becomes, for example, what is the gross income? Just like that first question that I cited, it could align with that. So, instead of formula, pivot table answers your questions in seconds instead of formula. Now, what we are saying is that from the beginning to the end of this pivot table training, you will notice that I'm not going to write any function. I am not going to write any function. But you know what? The results we are going to get even without writing function, cannot be compared with even when you are the best in Excel function. So that is to tell you how powerful it is. So without writing function, pivot table can help you to perform or answer your analysis question in seconds. Now, let's shift our focus to understanding our data structure. Understanding our data structure is make sure that you take note of the sequence. This is the best way you can conquer this particular tool. If you understand the step by step, what you are supposed to do. Now, any data you are given that you intend to use pivot table to analyze, you must understand the structure of that data. If not, you will just be looking at the pivot table without knowing the possible insights you can actually draw from the data set with. So a data set is a structure collection of data arranged in rows and columns. So like the data set I have right now. So this is my data set, and I am talking about understanding its structure before you commence your analysis with the pivot table. No, though it's part of what I have already mentioned from the beginning. Now, there are certain things that should be put in place before you use pivot table, and I'm going to mention them and also apply them in a moment. Now, understanding your data structure, know that each row is a record. The whole of this is a record. Get that understood. Also understand that each column is a field. That is what this total is a field, date is a field, time is a field, customer is a field, gender is a field, product line is a field. So that is for you to understand your data. Now, the next thing we need to understand on any data sets we want to use pivot table is what we call is identifying the rules of the clean data. Identifying the rules of a clean data. So what does that actually mean? It means that any data set you want to use pivot table, you ensure that there is no empty rows or empty column. So if you look at this data, if there is empty column in between or empty row, you have to read them off before you commence the application of the pivot table. So which means that you must have done your data cleaning. Now, understanding the rules of the clean data also means that each column has a header. You must make sure that each of the column has a header or a label. For example, it will be wrong for you to have these values here and it doesn't have a header or label. Such a data is not compatible to be used for pivot table analysis, because pivot table analysis rely on the header. In fact, it uses the header to perform the analysis. That is why we are talking about you ensuring that there is no column without a description. Now, it also means that understanding the rules of a clean data also means that no merge cells. For example, any data you want to use for pivot table analysis, you shouldn't merge like these two set together. Remember that we have done merging before. That is not allowed. That is not allowed. So it must be avoided. Take note of that. It also means that your data type must be consistent. Your data type must be consistent. Now, what does that mean? It means that all the data value under the field must be defined with their right data types. For example, this should be defined as date. This should be defined as time. This should be defined as string. This should be defined as double or floats. This should be defined as integer. So all of that must be well stated. That is what we mean by understanding the rules of a clean data before you proceed with the pivot table. Now, how do we ensure all this? How do we ensure all this? So one of the ways I'm going to ensure all this is that, in fact, there is one more thing that I need to mention before I go into the application of few things that will enable our data to be in the right structure, as we have highlighted. Now, it is not compulsory, but is an advice, is a kind of standard practice that any data set you want to use for pivot table analysis, ensure that that data is converted to table. Ensure that that data is converted to table. Now, what it means is that this particular entry is not a table. These are just entry arranged in columns and rows. Now, the table we are referring to in this context is the preset, pre-style that comes with a filter activated. For example, why is it advised that the data set should be converted or formatted as table? To enhance what we call updation, to enhance updating. Now, because after your analysis, your reports are supposed to be what? Updating automatically whenever new entries are entered in the worksheet. And that is why it is called dynamic and interactive what? Dashboard. So we do not expect that you perform analysis today and tomorrow they impute more value, and then the new entry could not automatically, or when you refresh, reflect in all your analysis model. That is not how it's structured. So to boost that, to enable the data to be refreshed in a way that it will automatically refresh also all your in your analysis, your pivot table analysis, it is advised that you format as table. So let's quickly check those things. So I'm highlighting the whole data set, and then the next thing I'm doing, I want to make sure that let me see. So the first thing I want to do is to format it, is to go to data, I want to make sure that I activate filter, then go to data, and then select what? Filter. All right. So that is the first thing. Now, why I selected that filter, though if you format as table, the filter command will be assigned automatically. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is to freeze the top row. Why? Because you will notice that if I scroll up, I am no longer seeing the header. I wouldn't want that. So I want to fix the top header in a way that even though I scroll, I should see the what? The record should be wrapping under it. So how do I do that? So to do that, you will see from data here, we should be able to see the command called freeze. So let me look for it here. Where do I have it? I have it. This where I have it. Sorry, looking for the name of this command again. Just give me a few minutes. Yeah, I used to have it. It's escaped my memory. Let me fetch it out. Where is this command again? Okay, so there's a place where I used to get that command. I don't know why it's running away from my memory. Let me see if I can't find it. I know before the end of the class I should be able to see it, but let me just see if I can remember. It should be under data. Yeah, okay. I think I will attend to it. Let me see if I can.
Please, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for row freezing. I don't know if you can able to freeze
Okay,
row.
it's in the view tab, sir. Check the
Where?
view tab.
Where? Inside?
View tab.
Okay,
View.
good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I know. Good. So you come to view, and then you will see this freeze pan. Then the option I'm looking for, or the option I'm going to use, what? Freeze top row. So now if I scroll, you will see that you can see that the records are now what? Wrapping under what? The heading. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next thing is to convert the data to table, like I said, which is also advisable. So to convert the data to table, that should be in home. And then you come to format as table. So like I told us, table are precise structures. All right, so once you use any of them, your data appearance will change. So for example, we have this table structure or templates broken in different categories. We have some under light, we have some under medium, we have some under dark. So I would like to pick from here. So let's pick this. Then when you are converting your data to table, ensure that if your data have, of course, is one of the criteria, definitely your data must have what, or should have headers. So which means that this option should be checked. That says my table has headers. And what we are seeing here is the range, is the argument that defines the area, the total area where you currently have your data. Now you click OK, and then you see that what? The data format has changed. All right, now, which means that at this point, we are good to go with the pivot table application. Now that we understand this, the next thing is for us to identify some analysis questions. So for example, you need to have known the analysis question you would like the pivot table function to answer. So that is very important. That is very important. That is very important. I don't know how strong my internet is. I will have just showed us, but I believe it's something that if I describe it, you can do. So you can copy all these headers and open your ChatGPT, and then tell ChatGPT that, okay, you are given a data set with all these headers. You paste those headers. You are given a data set with all these headers. Then ask ChatGPT to draft the possible analysis question that can be answered with pivot table. Within few seconds, you will see a lot of questions given to you. In fact, most time, that is the way to go. That is the way to go on any platform you want to analyze, want to use for data analysis. Just copy the header. In fact, let me see if I can. Just that I don't want the network is not strong enough. If you copy, let me see, because I know some persons may not be able to navigate. So I copy this. Let me just try if the network will be fast.
So whenever you are given a data set, you can use this idea to know the standard analysis question that will be involved. You don't need to disturb your memory. The only challenge you will face is that after ChatGPT has given you the questions, your ability to know which Excel function. Though if you still drill ChatGPT, it can still help you. It's okay. Also recommend what functions. But that depends on how you are able to apply that. So I can say acts as a data analyst using pivot table. Help me suggest or drafts analysis questions. My data sets have the following headers, and then you paste them. Don't know whether what I pasted came out. Let me check. Let me go back and copy again. I'm not sure that. Let me, what I will do is that, let me turn off the filter command, Control C, Control, just pray that, wondering whether I'll upload pending. Okay, let me run it and see whether so you can actually try that. Once you try it, if your network, I believe, I don't know whether it's my network, you will say ChatGPT will help you to draft a lot of questions that can be asked on that data. On any data set you are given, you can try it. So let me just switch off from here. I'll come back to this to check later. All right, so now that we have formatted our data, like I said, we are supposed to look at some questions. So let's look at, I'm going to draft, of course, there are a lot of analysis questions here that can be answered. So I will just mention few of them, and then probably in the course of the analysis, we will answer more questions. Now, the first question is, I am to aggregate the gross income per customer type or per city. That is going to involve summation or summary of what value. Now, I can also be asked to also count the total numbers of entry per city. So that will involve the counts, or the count if and the sum if we used the other time. So like I said, let me just go with these two questions. So as we proceed, we should be able to see more questions. Now, once you have identified your questions, the next thing is for you to know the pivot table method. There are actually two ways you can use the pivot table. We have the method called using the headers manually, or let me just say what manual method. And why it is called manual method, because
you are the one that will use the headers in the data set you are given to perform the analysis. So you are not going to get any form of suggestion. Then we have the recommended option. The recommended option is where pivot table, with the help of some inbuilt intelligence functions or algorithm, that once you highlight the entire data and click on that option, you will see that pivot table will suggest so many questions or analysis for you. So the idea is that you can look at those generated reports. If they do not align with what you want to do, you can either reconstruct them to match or to fit what you want to analyze or your analysis question, or you adopt them the way they are. That is if you notice that pivot table actually what speaks your mind. So, but we are going to start with the manual method, because if you do not understand the manual method, sometimes you may not even understand the logic behind converting that preset to what you want. So how do we go about it? Now, remember that you must have formatted your data as table, just like mine now. Then make sure that you click somewhere within the data. It's not compulsory that you highlight the entire data anymore. Then you go to insert tab. Now, once you get to insert, you are going to see these two options. So this is the option that requires the manual option or method. So, but I'm not going to touch this today. Probably this will be in the next class, because I just want to focus on the manual method so that we can understand all the logic. So you click on it. Now, the moment you click on it, you have a dialog box. And this dialog box has a lot of information we need to understand. The first option here says select a table or range. Select a table or range. Now, a table has already been selected. You can see the selection word thread here, which means that what you have already selected a table. Now, the next option here is use an external data source. So this is where probably you want to connect to maybe the company that gives you the data set, or the company you are working for have their data outside Excel, maybe probably in their server or somewhere. So in that case, they must give you the information, because the moment you click on it, it will allow you to choose what your connection. And then if that setup has not been put in place, you are going to get this particular error. But if you want to browse more connection, then depending on where the data is. So that is, let's say you have the data in maybe in your flash drive. So if this direct connection did not give you what you want, or maybe you want to connect connection in this workbook, or connection file on the network, or connection file on this computer. So if you have any of those, if that matches what you want to do, then you can follow it. Now, but for us, we have our data right in this sheet, so we are going to go with this option. Now, down here, you have two options that you must know when to choose, any of them. The first one says new worksheets. Remember that your pivot analysis are not expected to reside in the same sheet where you have your source data. It is not professional. Now, you click on what? You click on new worksheet, so that it will project the pivot report automatically by itself to a new sheet. Now, but supposing, let's go this way. Supposing you have already prepared the sheet and you have assigned row. Let's say I come here now. I have prepared this sheet as my pivot analysis, for example. Particularly when we get to the dashboard
aspect, we are going to do something like this. And then I've also prepared another sheet as my dashboard. All right. So now we are here. We are here. And then I'm going again, go to insert, then select this. And it's asking me to choose. In this case, I shouldn't go with this because I have my sheet already created. So I will go with this. But going with this, you have to click inside here and switch to the sheet where you intend to see the pivot reports. So what I'm going to do here, I know the particular sheet that I have created or set aside for displaying all my pivot analysis. So I'll click here and then I'll select where I want to start from. Now remember, I am not going to be interested in formatting anything that I have on this sheet. This sheet is where I will simply perform all my pivot table analysis or pivot analysis. All right. The record, whatever I must have programmed here, will be referenced into the dashboard where I must have designed the graphical interface of my dashboard, which is going to be the last aspect we are going to learn. So in case you do not see me formatting anything, you know that that is the plan. The plan is not to, this is not what I'm going to present to the stakeholder. I am going to what? This is where I am performing the key analysis, and thereafter I am going to reference the values that I have in this particular sheet. After designing the user interface of my dashboard, I'm going to be what? Calling them in. So that is the idea. So which means that I can come here and say, okay, I want to answer one of those questions that we drafted, which is perform analysis that compare the gross income, per what? City. So let's say I want to put it here. So you click there and that particular cell range is what? Called here. Then you click OK. So you see that the pivot table will no longer go to a new sheet. Instead, it will be inserted where you have planned to use it. Now, another thing again we need to understand is that your pivot table report is currently empty. Is currently what? Empty. And you can see the instruction are given to you here that to build a report, choose field from the pivot table. That is why I highlighted the rules, understanding the rules of a clean data. All right. So now you know that is why I stated that the data you want to use for your pivot analysis, header should not be missing, because the headers, they are called what? The field. Now, before we look at the field, you can see a kind of property bar that came out as soon as you are selecting the pivot report. If I click outside, those features will disappear. It means that I can only see them when I click on pivot table. Now, the functions span from analyze to design. But like I told us, I'm not going to complete all of them, but I just want to show us this section for now. Now, if you mistakenly click on this field list, you can see the whole of this section that you are seeing. If you are analyzing data with pivot table and you could not see this section, is as good as you cannot answer any analysis question. So just in case you mistakenly click here, you can click here to turn it off, such that you are still selecting the pivot table, but you cannot find the what? The field, the data field. So just for you to know that you can activate and you can deactivate it. So by the time we have performed some analysis, I will come here to show us some of these things. Now, that is what you need to know at the moment. Now, let's look at another thing again that you need to understand before you start answering or performing your analysis. There is a section which is this. It is called pivot table panel.
It is called pivot table panel. Anybody that wants to be able to analyze data effectively with pivot table must understand the usage of this panel. So let me quickly run it down for us. Now, you have no business using the filter until a report is generated. So my focus right now is going to be on the column section, the value section, and the row section. Now, the column section is used to analyze strings horizontally. Now, if you look at that, your question, the question says that we should summarize gross income. We should summarize gross income against what? The unique what? Cities, which means that city, they are string. City values are not number. Okay? So what we are saying is that on no occasion, you drag a field with what? Number in here. It's not allowed. That is why I'm saying that the column is only used for analyzing string-based what? Value. But how will it structure the value? It will structure the values horizontally. All right. Now, the row is also used to analyze string, but in a vertical manner. Now, see how it works. Now, city was mentioned in that what? Analysis question. So if I drag city and I add it here, you see what happened? Pivot table automatically what? Analyze the unique word city, which means that I have just 3 city in that particular data set. That is what you will have copied and start removing duplicate before you can know the unique word city. Now, but how does it structure them? You can see that it's arranged them in what? Horizontal. But for me, that this horizontal is not, it might be your choice, but I prefer vertical reports. So now look at what happened. If I drag this from here and I put it here, you see that it gives me what? A vertical what? Report. So you must know how to use this. All right. Now, the question says gross income against what? Unique city. Now we have analyzed the unique city. Now that will take us to the value. The value is a panel which is only used for analyzing numerical value depending on the function you are using. So for example, I have to go and add gross income. So let me go down. I have to add gross income here. So the moment I add the gross income here, you see pivot table has already what? Performed what we used to achieve with what? Sum if, where we normally use one criteria, sum if. So you can see that you do not need sum if again if this is what you want to do. Now, another thing again we need to understand is that pivot table can actually analyze multiple words, criteria. Question. For example, if I am to write this question, this is summarizing gross income per each of the what? The city. Now, supposing the question says that, okay, can you further break this number, this value per gender? We want to know the portion or the percentage of female and male in this particular word, gross income. That is 2 criteria. So how do you communicate that in pivot table? Now, that gender is a string. So which means that you have no business bringing it here. This is where it should come. So I will go to the gender. I also allow us to get to where I am before I proceed. I'll go to the gender and then drag that gender. Then make sure that if you allow it, you can see that blue selection. If you place it, it means that you are converting gender to be your main question. No longer what? Sub question. But if you bring it down, it means that what? Gender is a sub question under what? The main question. So if I drop it, you see what happened? So pivot table has automatically what? Broken what? Each of the total per what? Gender. Now, within this amount, you have this for female And then you have this for what? For May. So you can go to your PowerPoint or wherever you are writing your observation and write your observation. If you are to write your observation, you will notice that what? Both male and female, they are, in fact, the margin of their differences is not that really what? Much. All right. So I'm going to give us like 5 to 10 minutes for every one of us to get to this place. And when I come back, I will continue exploring the pivot table techniques and other functions. If you have any question, you can also ask. If you don't have question, please, you can start doing the classwork. Before we... All right, so so that is actually the idea behind if you are to answer multiple questions. It's just for you to know the structure of the question. Now, you can see why you have this button. If you click here now, you can see that what? You can no longer see the collapse and the expansion button. So in case you can't find it, you click here. So what it does is that now you have expanded this particular report based on the question you are focusing on at the moment. If I want to focus on the very first question or the first part of the question, then I will collapse this. I will collapse this. So at the moment, I am answering only the first question. So when I want to see the outcome of the sub question, then I can now what? Expand it to take my observation. So that is how to now the same thing you can also use, you can also analyze with multiple value. Let's say number. So this is 3. For example, you also want to aggregate. You also want to aggregate this gross income, or let's say you want to aggregate to that value we have here. You want to aggregate maybe COGS. So you can drag it and add it here. So you see that what? It gives you another word, column, presenting that particular word analysis. So we should understand all of this. If I want to even go down to 3 criteria, you can also drag this also and put it here. Now, if you go back now to expand it, you see that you have the 2 questions, what? Answers. So you can see that it's now becoming a more complex analysis. So I just wanted us to understand that you can use pivot table to answer multiple criteria question and also single criteria question. So let me return it to this and then oh, sorry, let me bring back the gross income. All right, now let's answer another question. I will just perform 3 analyses, and then after the 3 analyses, I will show us some few functions, how you can use that to manipulate your pivot report, and then we will now stop there since nobody is practicing in the class. Now, let's assume that I want to answer another question, and the question is, I want to know the total numbers of transactions that generated each of these summations. That is going to require you using count function, because by default, pivot table has already programmed sum. And that is why what we have right now is the outcome of what? Summarizing or summing values. Now, you can actually change the label. You can click here and change it, because right now it's not actually describing what is there. No, we are supposed to have city. So you can actually modify the pivot report header. Here I can also modify it to something else, total. So like I told us, all this might not be necessary, and even we are building dashboard, because we are not going to even depend on this label. So, but since at the moment we are still here, let me still show us how to perform them. So let's say this is the total. In fact, I can just say what? Total. So now why is rejecting it? Because there is a column here that is bearing exactly total. So that is why it's not taking it. Let me just put S just to accept it. Right? Now, for me to answer that second question, and what is the question? How many or perform counting analysis to know the total number of transactions that led to this summation. Now you can actually copy. Okay, no, let me go this way so that we can master the process. Maybe the next question I will use the shortcut I wanted to use. So I'm going back to the data so that we can take the whole process again. Then going to insert, remember, go to pivot table, then choose existing because we have a dedicated sheet already. Then go to that sheet, and then I want to output it maybe here. And then click what? Okay. Now, I am answering that same question, but I'm going to use different function. So, but let me get the default analysis first. So I'll put what? City here. I'll put gross income here. And then what I am going to do is to switch from sum function to count function. So that is what this particular question demands. And how do you do that? You don't need to highlight all the value, just select one of the value. Within that report, you want to switch each function. Right click on it and then go to what? Summarize value by. You can see that currently you are using sum. Right? When I started, I said pivot table is a powerhouse for most statistical analysis functions. So now I'll switch to count. So you can see that it has automatically reanalyze the model with count function. Now, the third question I want to answer is I'm also asked to analyze the average. Let's say the company wants to know the average. Now, I wanted to use a shortcut the other time. The shortcut is that you can just copy the whole of this report that you have generated and then paste it. And then after pasting it, what you are going to do is that we will just change the function. In this case, supposing I am to analyze the average not on gross income, maybe another, not even on the city. So how do I update this particular analysis table? So what I'm going to do is to select it, and then I am dropping the city, and I am picking product line. I am dropping the gross income. Maybe you want to analyze with another field. Let me see. Where do I have the gross income? So I'm also dropping gross income, and I am picking costs. So the idea is to show you that you can change the field depending on the analysis question. So instead of you going through that process of going to the data, choosing the range, and then start dragging the headers or the field, you can just copy one of the results you have, one of the reports you have created, and then do what I just did now, and then you get it sorted out. So that is for that. So like I said, I still want to show us some basic functions that you can use on your pivot report. For example, you can see that this particular information is not sorted. Let's me focus on this. These records are not sorted. So how do you sort the record so that you can know the highest? In this case now, I need to change this to, this should be products. This should be products, maybe product name or whatever. This should be product name. Now, Supposing I'm writing my findings now, and I want to know which of the products have the highest COGS. If I sort this particular report to help me to what? Identify it easily. So you right click on one of the value and then go to sort, and then you choose your order. So in this case, we are sorting with largest to what? Smallest. So you can see that what? You have automatically what? Sorted the pivot report value. So the same thing applicable to other what? Information. It's just for you to know that you can actually what? Sort your pivot reports. You can sort your pivot reports. Now, the next thing I also want us to know is the filter section. The filter. Remember, I told us that you have no business considering the filter until you have a generated report. Now, let me show us how the filter works. At the moment, the analysis question you are answering, I'm focusing on this report. The analysis question you are answering is, what is the sum of COGS per what? Products per product type. That is the analysis question you are asking. Now, and somebody now asks now, okay, I want you to use the same analysis model, but this time around, I want you to narrow the whole of this to display only female transaction. That is, this value, the value that should be here, should give us only the sum of COGS for only female. The one here should give us the same thing at the end. That is the next question now. So how do you filter this to show you only value from that particular transaction? So that is where you will now make use of your filter. But we have an advanced filter command, which we will learn later. Ordinarily, if your data structure do not permit you to do this, no worry, there is another advanced function that is actually designed for this. But let me just show us how to apply this one in this section. Now, you must identify the filter criteria header. The question says that you should narrow this report to present only summary of COGS per item type where gender is equals to female. So which means that this is the column you have to drag and add here after selecting that particular report. So I'm going to drag this and add it here. So the moment I add this here, you see that what? Another information has been added. Now, how do you now use it? Right now, you are filtering all. So you click on this filter icon. So you are going to see the unique values in that particular header. So right now, we want to filter by female. So I'll click on female and then click OK. You see that what? The whole of this reports is now displaying only reports that meet that female criteria. So I can go back again and say, okay, return all, and then filter by male. So as you are doing this, probably you are writing your observation in your executive report. So I can go with female and then do the same. So let's say I want to even change it. I want to take it out. I want to filter by, so that to make more sense. This is product. I want to filter by city. I want to filter by city. So if I come here now, I say, okay, now I have 3 cities. So I can say, okay, I want to view only record from Yangon, and then I click. All right, so that is how flexible, pivot table. You can see what we are doing easily without writing function or formula. Now, there is an option that says select multiple items here. Now, let's assume that you are asked to display report from Yangon and Napitol. So which means that you have to what? Turn on this so that you can check what? Multiple option and then click OK.
So right now, what I have here is the report from those two cities. Any question, please?
Yes, sir, I have a question. Please, sir, this pivot table, you're taking multiple pivot tables in the sheet. Is that advisable? And if I decide to create separate, I want to answer each question the pivot table is for, and I want to dedicate each of them for a spreadsheet. This filter option, you need to reflect on all the pivot tables automatically.
No. This one, that is why I said this one is not the advanced one. This one is for a particular report. When we get to where we use a slicer, that's the one we use. We want to affect all the reports. I just want to dwell on this. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. So, but creating the pivot tables, multiple pivot tables in a sheet, is it okay? Because
Vertical.
no, like, you're creating multiple pivot tables in one sheet. Like me, I was thinking it's too clustered. Not like, it's just a personal thing. I was just like, when I want to now put pivot table, will it not be too clustered and just, I don't know. I just want to make it, if it's okay to do this, like, put multiple pivot tables in one sheet.
Okay. How many of them do we have in this sheet now? Let me count. How many of them do
You
we
have
have?
3 here.
So are you saying that
3.
the three are too much already? Or you are thinking whether it's
No,
out?
we're not done. We're not done. You know what, me, I find this easy. I find this even okay. But I want to know, for example, if I have like 10 questions or maybe they're about to answer, can I do all of them like this now? You're doing all of them in one sheet.
No. I don't know. Maybe your network was not good when I started. Were you in when I started? When I
No,
started,
sir.
and that is why you are asking that
No,
question.
no.
I've told them that
Okay.
what we are going to do here does not matter. Okay, after all, when we want to create our dashboard, what we are doing here is just for us to get the insight. Then we will assemble the dashboard. So it then now means that you can choose to spread them across different sheets. But what matters is that by the time you are done with your dashboard, all the values in those sheets that you would like to reflect or to be analyzed in your dashboard will be referenced into that dashboard. I don't know if you get my point. So it's your choice. Like you can spread them in 20 sheets. Then, so long you are going to assemble them in one dashboard at the end of the day.
Okay.
So
Okay. Thank
whether
you,
you
sir.
have 3 here or 4 here does not matter at this moment. What I'm doing right now, I'm just
Okay.
teaching us how to use the pivot table functions itself before we look at how to create dashboard. Any other question, please? If you don't have question, I'm going to stop here, and then you guys should go and practice to this level before we continue in our next class. Because this thing
Thank you, sir.
wants to be in a way that you guys are working. But if you're not working, don't think be too much. Because the video will be too long. Then when people watch half, they will leave. They will say that they cannot do the assignment. So we are going to stop here. So please, I encourage every one of us to make sure that you play with what I have taught so far to help you to proceed with us in the next class better. So if there is no other question, we stop here.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Good night then.